Hey guys, welcome back. Drip Coach here with Drip and Farm for poverty, where we don't trust, we verify and operate with integrity and transparency. Today we got a clip from Simply Bitcoin. They've talked about this a couple times. I brought it up as well, and it's basically what the hell's going on with the price of Bitcoin. Like we're doing good. Don't get me wrong, but based off of all of the stuff we see in the news about all these new Bitcoin Treasury companies, ETF inflows, Saylor buying and stacking, sovereign wealth funds buying. It's like, why is the price moving? And the question they're bringing up here is is it paper Bitcoin? TLDR, we don't know, but there is something that you can definitely do about it to ensure that you are not part of this scheme or house of cards if there is indeed paper Bitcoin in the system. And I'm going to show you guys that after we kind of cover this intro from Rustin.
Tens of dollars in Bitcoin, hundreds, thousands, hell, tens of thousands of Bitcoin are being bought every week. So how in the cloven hooves of Elizabeth Warren are we not at $1 million right now? Everyone has beat around the bush. Samson yesterday just said we should be at 200K right now. Michael Saylor said the fact we're at these prices right now is a joke. So what is happening? Is Bitcoin's price being suppressed? Or is it a coiled spring on the verge of making Peter Schiff crap his pants? We're about to break it down, and welcome back. I'm Rustin. Today, we take down the paper Bitcoin cabal and reveal how you can protect yourself from the paper Bitcoin army.
Here come the ETFs. The SEC did one thing right, and I praised them for it back then, which is that they prohibit in the prospectuses for the Bitcoin ETFs the custodians from rehypothecating Bitcoins. Now, they don't have to publish their reserves for proof of reserves. I wish they had gone that far, but at least there's a prohibition on rehypothecation. And, frankly, I don't know how examined these entities are. I don't know whether they're actually complying with that rehypothecation prohibition. My fear is that they're not, but at least the SEC did that. They kept...
Just a quick segue on that. So that is positive legislation and framework that we got. But like she just mentioned, there's really no checks and balances on this. And we know that Wall Street and big money have been playing the rehypothecation game and paper derivatives. And, that's what the gold market is all made of. So we know that once they got approved, they're going to bring their old rules into play at this stage. And like she mentioned, it's not mandatory that these entities show proof of reserves. And we saw Michael Saylor kick the can around at that conference where he's like, a company our size and what we do, it's not advantageous and even risky for them to show proof of reserves. I kind of call a little bit of bullshit, but at the same time, I don't know enough about holding billions and dollars of Bitcoin as a Fortune 500 company and the rules and regulations. So I have no clue. But I do know people like Jack Mallers in 21, and even now Anthony Pompliano with Ledn shows proof of reserves. So I'm on the fence, still super bullish on Saylor and what he's done to the space. If it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be this probably level of adoption and more than likely regulation. He's pushed the button on quite a few people to get this stuff moved forward. He wasn't a solo pioneer, but being the first publicly traded company to do so definitely was a step in the right direction, and getting all that stuff approved with the previous SEC. So I'm going to say he was a pioneer in moving the framework forward that we finally got done. But the big elephant in the room is there paper Bitcoin in the system? And I believe there is. But again, it's very hard to verify all of that. So let's continue with the definition she's got, and then we'll figure out, what at least you can do as a self-sovereign individual.
kept it so that those ETFs could not end up being massively rehypothecated at the base layer custody of the actual Bitcoin. The securities, the ETF units themselves are rehypothecated, probably 20 times at this point because they're very liquid. So be careful, right? If you don't own actual base layer Bitcoin that you self-custody in your own wallet, then you're exposed to this counterparty credit risk of your custodian not having the actual Bitcoin that they say they have.
Now, on that note, I will say shout out to Mystify for building this platform, high yield BTC and Thrift BTC. This does require you to initially self-custody your Bitcoin. So you know that you are indeed, wherever you bought your Bitcoin, you must remove it from that centralized exchange on the BTC blockchain, and then move it over here into a verifiably on-chain wallet. Now, again, segue to that is that these keys are custodied by Mystify. So it's not complete self-custody, but you do not have paper Bitcoin once you've removed it from wherever you bought it and moved it over here. Like, that is verifiable on chain. That is completely transparent. And then also shout out to Ledn, because they tell you straight up, if you're going to do a loan, that you have two options. You can get the rehypothecated loan option. Where is that? Usually sitting right here. I guess they changed it a little bit. Let's see, apply for loan, just to show you. Usually it'll say for, yeah, never mind, I don't see it. But there's two different options. It'll tell you one's rehypothecated and one is non-rehypothecated. For those in the back row or new to crypto, rehypothecated means that they take your money and loan it out to someone else. And then they can loan it out again and again and again. And that's how you end up with the big snowball that just blows up, and what happened with BlockFi and Celsius in the last cycle. Used to be right here, it showed you the two different versions, and you would get two different options. Like, I have 13.9 because it's non-rehypothecated a loan. So I think the other one is 12.5 or something like that. So the interest rate is higher if they don't loan it out, because by loaning it out, they obviously earn money on that. So again, shout out to them, because your Bitcoin is verifiable on chain. In order to get it here, you do have to remove it from a centralized exchange, give it to them, and they do show proof reserves verifiably on chain. I was going to go into Coinbase's Morphe, but that one is only visible on the mobile app. However, I did do a Grok deep dive analysis, and supposedly Morphe is verifiable on chain through wrapped BTC. We'll get into wrapped BTC and other blockchains that do have wrapped Bitcoin, and that is something you have to verify. But let's just play the rest of this clip, because she talks about that as well.
And the next layer of potential rehypothecators is just Wall Street firms. They have been prohibited by the Fed. Remember, I said the Fed's still blocking the big banks. The big Wall Street firms are all big banks. Not all of them. Cantor Fitzgerald is not, but most of them, Goldman, Morgan, Citi, JP Morgan, Bank of America, they are all Fed regulated, and they can't hold Bitcoin on balance sheet yet. The moment they start to be able to hold Bitcoin on balance sheet, there's going to be a huge rehypothecation wave again. But then you asked me about the Bitcoin Treasury companies. So far, I have not seen that they are rehypothecating. And to be honest, in a lot of cases, they're hardcore Bitcoiners like us who understand that if you rehypothecate Bitcoin, all you're doing is recreating the problems of the existing system. And
so that's mainly talking about Saylor, because he's the biggest, he owns the most and the biggest treasury company, sole entity treasury company. And we're deducing that he's not rehypothecating. He is putting leverage onto Bitcoin, but he's doing it in a quote unquote risk-free way, in a safe way. But make no mistake, and there's a clip by him that I've played before, and I think it's even in here, that all of this going on right now, rehypothecation or not, leverage or not, treasury companies, all this stuff, this is what does indeed create a bear cycle. So you got everybody getting in greedy, they're not happy, as Ralph Al said, with 5x or 3x. They want 100 to 1,000, so they take leverage, and then something inevitably blows up, and then the whole thing corrects. So at some stage we will see that, because that's just the typical emotional fear and greed roller coasters that you see in markets. But I'm in the camp of what Saylor said, is that, yeah, we'll see 50% correction, but it'll be after BTC goes up to $400,000 to $500,000 a coin, which means we're just back to 200K, 150K levels.
so they're not playing three-card Monty so far. I'm not saying that I can attest to that, so do your own research, go look at the filings for every one of these companies and see if they commit not to rehypothecating. If any of them does, frankly, please put it out on Twitter, because that's what happened with BlockFi and Celsius. People just reported on that. People who were looking at their customer agreements were saying that they were rehypothecating. It was there in black and white. And so, some argue that customers were warned about this. I look at it and say, a lot of people, if you ask some random person on the street, what does rehypothecation mean? They would have no idea. And so if they were reading the prospectus, if they were bothering to read the prospectus, they wouldn't, if they saw that, understand what it really means. But when you tell them what it really means, everyone would just recoil in horror and say, are you kidding me? I'm giving someone money and they're turning around and lending it and might not have it when I want to and when I have the right to redeem it. But yes, that's what happened. So I would throw back to your viewers, if any of you know if any of the Bitcoin Treasury companies are rehypothecating, bring it out. Go find it in the prospectuses. With AI, it's a lot easier to find that kind of stuff now than it was in the past. Bring it out. Let's get out and let's help each other learn and do the research on whether these companies actually have the Bitcoin that they say that they have.
Nailed it. If you rehypothecate Bitcoin, all you're doing is recreating the problems of an existing system. Paper Bitcoin is the biggest scam no one's talking about. Is there such a thing as paper Bitcoin? Yes. And it's more dangerous than Janet Yellen with a machete tripping on mushrooms. You see, what you think is Bitcoin on an exchange might just be an IOU. A mirage, a number on a screen that vanishes faster than your savings in a Weimar Republic simulator. Let me break it down. What is paper Bitcoin? It's a claim to Bitcoin that isn't actually.
And that's exactly what I was just showing you guys with BTC, Ledn, and all that stuff. So the main TLDR is that, yes, you should self-custody your crypto. And I know for some that is extremely scary or risky because there's no one to blame. When the shit hits the fan or something bad happens, it's solely your own fault. So if your wallet gets compromised or you lose the security, the seed phrase, then you've lost access to that. On the flip side, we're also, most of us are familiar with centralized entities like our banks that have held our own money. So a lot of people are definitely feel more comfortable leaving their Bitcoin on, say, Binance or Coinbase. And I won't lie, I got some on both of those exchanges. I have not self-custodied all of my BTC myself. And that's why I was showing you with Morphe, because that exists solely on a blockchain that Coinbase controls. So, and Brian Armstrong and Coinbase aren't exactly the most positive companies and leaders in the space in regards to transparency and all this other stuff. So you got some issues there with Coinbase, but from what I can find, like I said, I have not done a deep dive on Morphe. I just kind of dove in head first, and I've got a loan out on there, and so far it's running smooth. But I'm gonna let you guys know that definitely before this bull run is over, I will be removing the bulk of my crypto from Binance and Coinbase and Morphe. Binance, I might keep more there. I personally am just more, I feel more comfortable with them. However, that was under CZ's regime. And now that he's out, the new CEO, Michael, I believe, I don't know how he will shape up. So CZ kept everything SAFU and had one-to-one assets. They were able to pay huge amounts of fines to the SEC. They had tons of runs on the bank when Coinbase, Celsius, BlockFi blew up and FTX blew up. Binance had no issues at all. So I personally, quote unquote, trust them. But like I said, that was under the previous leadership, and you should not trust any of these exchanges. That's just my own personal disclaimer. But I do plan on removing the bulk of these assets, self-custodying them myself. However, the flip side of that is if you do embrace the moniker of never selling your Bitcoin, then you have to find one of these entities that you trust, and preferably one that you don't have to trust. You can verify, but there still is some trust involved, i.e. Ledn is verifiable, but you're still trusting that they can hold your keys as they always have, and that their documentation and proof of reserves stays SAFU like it's been. So no matter what you do, there's always some level of trust. And even the BTC platform and high yield platform, You have to trust Mystify and his code and keeping everything sat through there. And there's also no way to borrow against this as of yet. So there's some good options, some better options, and some, risky options out there. But the main thing, the takeaway is that you need to verify that you have indeed purchased real Bitcoin and not paper Bitcoin. So all three of these platforms, from my research, do show that at least throughout their initial transactions, you are indeed getting real BTC moved off of exchanges and out of the fixed 21 million supply. And after that, it goes kind of into a black box. But at least you're initially getting that verifiable BTC. And if you remove it before some kind of black swan event, then you should not have any issues. So TLDR, kind of a little bit of clickbait you have on Simply Bitcoin. The scam exposed. We really, even him and me, there is nothing exposed here. We don't have any proof of paper Bitcoin, but it feels as though a lot of these treasury companies and ETFs and stuff are more than likely buying paper Bitcoin because there's just too many billions of dollars of BTC being purchased and the price is not moving. There's not that many OGs flipping Bitcoin to keep the price suppressed like that. However, we do see that BTC is at all-time lows in the total supply. And when you zoom in here, there is a uptick with BTC on exchanges slightly. I mean, it's not a lot right here. We had this dip down to 2.12 million, and now we're at 2.16. So we haven't even broken below 2 million on exchanges. But with with Michael Saylor and these other treasury companies buying tens of thousands by the week, it should not be long before we do break below that 2 million. And again, just because it's on the exchange doesn't mean that's all that's actually accounted for and being sold. But this is just the clearest on-chain metric that we can have about liquid supply, because anybody with OG Bitcoin could just all of a sudden make up their wallet and move 100,000 BTC onto the exchange and pump this number up. All right, that's all I got. Smash that HBO special, help a brother out, like, subscribe, comment down below, and until next time, live daily and achieve your possible. See ya.